Some time ago, my friend and colleague, Barbara Taylor, put me on to a book she recommended called The Patron Saint of Liars. Interesting title. By a young author named Ann Pritchard. It is the story of Rose Clinton and her daughter Cecilia, who live at St. Elizabeth's Home for Unmarried Women, unwed mothers, located in Habit, Kentucky. Rose is the cook, and Cecilia is sort of the darling of the place. 15 years old, cute little girl, runs around all over the place and helps take people's minds, the women's minds, off of why they are there. On one May Day, when she's 15 years old, Cecilia meets one of the new girls who has arrived at that institution. Her name is Lorraine. Lorraine is skinny with a head full of red hair curls, and she is about to have a nervous breakdown because she is waiting to be interviewed by the head nun, Sister Cecilia. Or Sister Mother Corinne, actually. Cecilia decides to help her out and engage her with a little advice. Now you get the picture. Here are two teenagers, one of whom is about 8 months pregnant, on her first day in this Catholic-run institution for the unwed mothers. And this cute little 15-year-old girl who's just as innocent as the day is long. So she gives some advice. The guy who got you pregnant, don't tell Mother Superior, Mother Corinne, that he's dead. Others do that. The girl sits there, Lorraine, sitting on her hands, very nervous, and she says, "What should I tell her?" And says, "Tell her the truth. Or tell her you don't remember what happened." What did you tell her? And Lorraine asked that of Cecilia, and Cecilia is speechless, totally taken back by that question. What did you tell her? She says, "I sat there absolutely frozen." She wrote that later. "I sat there absolutely frozen. I felt like I had been mistaken for some escaped mass murderer. I felt like I was going to be sick, but then that would have only approved her assumption. No one had ever mistaken me for one of them, not even as a joke. The lobby felt small and airless, and I thought I was going to pass out. It was all because she had been mistaken for one of them. One of the pregnant ones. One of the weak people whose decisions had messed up their whole lives and the lives of their families. Who had been sent off to this institution, hidden from everybody else in hopes of having a baby, putting it up for adoption, and then slipping back into their old routine. In theological terms, she had been mistaken for a sinner, and she couldn't stand it. It wasn't that she disliked sinners, she writes. She had grown up with them. She was friendly to them. She was helpful at this institution to all of the girls. gave them good advice, but she never expected that anyone would think she was one of them. She was a virgin, and she thought it was something anyone could see. An opposite kind of thing happened when Jesus showed up on the banks of the Jordan River to be baptized. The place was teeming with sinners. And not a lot has changed. Every week, and I forget what day it is, but the Gainesville paper has a section of all of the things that have taken place before the courts. The kind of things that people get indicted for. Drunk driving, bad checks, petty larceny, drugs, alcohol abuse, all of the things that we are familiar with. Crimes that sometimes are so awful their description cannot be printed. We read those things in the newspaper aware of our own innocence, we think. On the banks of the Jordan were all of those crowds of people who had come hoping that somehow, by wading out into those waters to John, who was up to his waist in the waters, that somehow by doing that their lives would be cleansed. A transformation would take place. That they might be acceptable. And then Jesus shows up, and what does he do? He gets in line with them. No one knew anything about him at that point in Mark's Gospel. It's the earliest of the Gospels. There's nothing in Mark's Gospel about a virgin birth or an overcrowded inn forcing a pregnant young woman to give birth in a stall. None of that. He shows up where John is baptizing, having hollered repentance to the top of his voice, and gets in line with the rest of them. Scholars say all this embarrassment is our surest proof that Jesus really was baptized by John. Jesus' baptism has always been difficult for the church to deal with, for theologians to explain why the Son of God on this day is on the banks of the river with all those other sinners wading out into the waters. Scholars say all this embarrassment is our surest proof that Jesus really was baptized by John. Because when someone tells you something that it is not in his best interest for you to know, then you can probably assume it's the truth. I love that quote. If Jesus had listened to public relations advisors, he would have been more like Cecilia in this story. Cecilia just wanted to be a friend to the sinners, kind of a loving helper, give them good advice, but did not want to be mistaken as one of them. If Jesus had public relations folks, they would have advised him, mingle with the crowd, help the people getting out of the water, help them dry off, get dry clothes, say nice things to them, wish them well, pat them on the back, send them home feeling good. One writer says, you see the problem? We spend a lot of time in the church talking about God's love for sinners, But we sure do go to a lot of trouble not to be mistaken for one of them. Guilt by association and all that. The problem is it didn't seem to bother Jesus at all. He's not on the shore wishing them well. He's standing in the middle of the river waiting for John to baptize him. Not concerned at all that he would be mistaken as one. This Sunday, today is one of the special days of the church year that is set aside for administering baptism to all those who wish to become a part of Jesus' family. In the absence of candidates for baptism, we renew our baptismal vows in place of the Nicene Creed. Our font sits up here as a reminder of our baptism, of all baptisms. Renewing our own vows is a wonderful way to remind us that we not only are sinful folk, but we're Jesus' sinful folk. It's a way of reminding us who we are, but more importantly, whose we are. So having said that, let us stand and renew our own baptismal vow.